I had absolutely no idea the level of information that I was holding on to that was pertinent to others. When people would make fun of me, tease me, I just didn't know how to react. I honestly did not know that my voice mattered. I honestly did not know that I still had a level of worth, that I was acceptable, that I was okay, that I was enough. Pain is what leads us to our purpose. It sucks that you have to go through it. Don't be afraid of the pain.
All right, welcome to another edition of the Living Boldly with Purpose podcast. I'm Dr. B. I am your host, and I'm overwhelmed excited just because sometimes you interact with people or you're able to talk to people who have sometimes the same interests that you have. And so, Jill and I today, because I know she's interested in doing podcasts and she's interested in making sure that she utilizes space because she has a voice. She has things that she wants to say. So I took it upon myself to give her some coaching and some talking about podcasts and what to do and how to use software and, how to set up your room and all that kind of stuff. And so it's so fun to be able to do that as a professor and a teacher and a technologist and all the things. Sometimes you just don't get the chance to interact in the way that we have. But what I'm super excited about is also her story and the things that she's been able to do and the things that she's been able to accomplish on her time in this planet. And so like I do with all of our guests, I ask them to tell their story, and I tell them that their story can start anywhere in life. And sometimes they get a kick out of it. They're like, you can start at your mama's womb if you want. And they're like, well, I don't remember that far back. And then you get the folks that go, well, I remember like when I was 2 weeks old. And I'm like, do you? Or is that like somebody told you what happened when you were 2 weeks old? And then somebody else said, well, no, I really do remember, or they tell you about some of the things in your childhood. But, one of the things that is just so important to me is that we get to know who the people are that we're going to interact, that we're going to trust, that we're going to do things with, especially if we're going to, at some point do business with them. And so, by doing that and understanding who they are, it allows us to understand this is why they do what they do. This is why they're good at doing what they do. And sometimes, I'll have guests that come on and they'll just say, well, this is what I do. I wrote this book. I want you to read this book. I want you to buy this book because I think it's a good book. And I'm like, well, I don't know nothing about you. I don't, just because you wrote a good book doesn't mean that I'm going to go ahead and buy it and read it. I want to know who you are. And maybe that's just me and coming across with a person who just enjoys relationships, enjoys having conversations with people and spending time. Jill and I were at a conference meeting in Texas not too long ago. And we were able just to kind of sit down during a break and just kind of get to know her a little bit and more things about her and the things that she loves doing and, where she, that she used to, live in New York and that now, she's living in Texas and all those things that are important to me to get to know somebody. And so today, I hope that comes across in our conversation. I hope it comes across in, just your belief system and why you would listen to this. And so you're going to get some gems out of it. I would encourage you to get maybe a piece of paper and take some notes out. Now, here's what's the beauty of it. And so, Jill, this is me in my beginning stages of podcasting. When I started going on podcast, I started watching podcasts and I would go on there and, the guy's talking and I'm watching it and I'm trying to take all these notes and I'm like writing down as fast as I could, not realizing that all I have to do is hit the pause button and then I can just write it down and take my time. I don't have to rush to take notes because it's a recorded podcast. It's not like it's live, but I'm so used to, wherever we, as we were growing up and going to meetings and being in rooms and it all be live. And if you don't get it written down right away, then you lost it. When I'm in school and, trying to get a teacher to repeat stuff back in the day, like you're taking notes. And now I'm like, with technology, oh yeah, I can just stop. I can just write it down. I can rewind it 10 seconds or forward it 10 seconds and go back. And so if you are watching it that way, I want you to have a piece of paper. I want you to take notes. If even your note is, and this is what I also learned is, as I was watching something, if all I could take a note is just on the timestamp, and I look at the time and say the time is at 10 minutes and 12 seconds, I could write 10, 12 and put a check mark. That way, when I go back, I know that was a point that I wanted to relearn, or a point that I thought that was really important. So instead of trying to write down everything, I just wrote down the timestamp of it. And now I could go back about 10 seconds before, then listen to just that part, because if it's an hour or 2 hour thing, you could be like, oh, I remember that was so good, and trying to find it all day long. So I've gotten really good, like with my dyslexia and everything, to be able to figure out how to take notes that not only I can read, but I can go back to, because reading my writing is just as difficult as remembering. So as you guys, I'm an auditory person, not a visual person, and so I can hear and remember that kind of stuff. But so those are just a couple tips. So, but this isn't about me today. This is about Jill. So, Jill, I want you to go ahead and tell your story. Tell us about everything that you possibly can that would be interested in, and even some things we might not be interested in but are important to you. And then we'll just have some fun and chop it up after that. Just glad to have you on the show. Thank you for taking your time out of your day on a Monday to be able to talk to us about, your life and the things that you do. So the floor is yours. I'm going to be quiet now. I'm going to let you talk.
Well, thank you. Thank you first and foremost for actually inviting me on your show, Dr. Arnold. It was such a pleasure having the conversation that we had when we were in Dallas, Texas. And you have no idea how I may not have shown it on the outside, but on the inside, based on our conversation, I was like, this is not coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe things happen for a specific reason in a specific time frame. And us having that conversation just opened up additional opportunities, this being one of them. So as I tell my story, hopefully I'll be able to also share some of the other things that happened during the conversation. So a little bit about myself. Like Dr. Arnold said, I am originally from New York. I grew up in Long Island during the 60s. And I grew up in a small town at that particular time called Westbury. And at the time that my parents made the decision to move to that neighborhood, it was a predominantly white neighborhood. And so it was for us as children growing up, we weren't really exposed to racism as far as what it actually felt like, what it looked like. And my parents sheltered us to a point because they were more focused on keeping us in a safe environment where there were decent schools. So my family, my children, well, actually, my family, my siblings, and I would be able to be in a safe environment where we can grow. And so growing up, I had friends from all different races. And my parents did a fairly good job of sheltering us to a certain degree from the ills of racism. Eventually, my mom did pass away when I was 7 years old, unfortunately, from cancer. And at that time, both of my parents were actually originally from Florida.
Okay.
And so most of the family on both sides, my mom and my dad, they lived in Florida. So I really didn't have a lot of my relatives around me growing up. Didn't have aunts, didn't have uncles, grandparents. And so that made it a little tough. And during that time, too, there was no grief counseling. We didn't have an opportunity to go to grief counseling. There was no checking in to see how we were doing emotionally or anything like that. And not to take anything away from my dad, because my dad was a wonderful, wonderful parent. He was an entrepreneur. He owned his own cleaning business. And so he did what he needed to do, take care of the family the best that he knew how. So in no way do I want this to be a negative reflection on my father. So growing up, there was 5 of us. I was the youngest. The 2 oldest were already out of the house when my mom had passed away. Mm-hmm. So it was just myself, my brother who was 2 years older, and then my sister who was 7 years older. So at the time she was 13 when my mom died. My brother was 9 and then I was 7. So going through school, I was exposed to a lot of different things culturally because of being in New York. My dad made sure that he exposed us to a lot of cultural things like going to plays. We traveled. We would go to different restaurants. He was very much in making sure that we were well-rounded as much as possible. He wanted to find out some of our likings, like my brother he's very good as far as drawing. So he went to art school and learned how to paint and things of that nature. I took up piano, violin. My sister took up the accordion of all things, which is kind of interesting. Wow. That's what she wanted to do, right? And I'm like, okay, go ahead, do it, So we were very well-rounded for the most part. The only thing that was missing was the mother figure and the nurturing factor, right? So as I am getting older, I never really knew exactly what I wanted to do, especially once I got out of high school. I felt like for me, I was going to do what everybody else is doing. Everybody's saying they're going to go to college. I'm going to go to college. I hadn't really pinpointed what my skill sets were. I hadn't really pinpointed what I was truly interested in. I didn't have an idea of what route I should go. And the only thing that I found myself kind of gravitated towards was clothes. Okay. And so I made a decision to go to a 2-year college. It happened to be a women's college at the time, and it was in upstate New York. And I basically majored in fashion merchandising. So I did that for the 2 years. After I graduated, I thought, well, maybe, if I work in retail, I can work myself up and work into a management position. And unfortunately, the whole retail thing didn't work out for me. And I ended up actually getting a job through a friend with one of the major banks in New York. And that's how my financial industry career pretty much started. It started in the banking industry.
Hey, it's Dr. B, and let me ask you something just here real quick. Are you tired of doing the same thing over and over and not getting the results you want? Are you serious about making some changes this year that will impact you in a huge way? Maybe you're putting out content right now and it's not turning into customers, or maybe you're uploading videos, but you're not sure why or how it's even gonna help. I've seen a lot of people that are making a whole bunch of cold calls to the wrong people, and no one's answering. No one wants to talk to you. It might just be that you're just doing what you've been doing and crossing your fingers hoping it finally works this year. But let me tell you what, that is not a strategy, and it will continue not to work. That's why I created the Podcasting Challenge, and it's coming up fast. In just a few days, I'm going to walk you through the mindset, the tool set, and the skill set you need to create a powerful podcast. That's right, a podcast. You won't believe what a podcast can do. One that builds real value and creates new clients. And if you grab a VIP ticket, you'll get to join me for a daily Zoom Q&A sessions where I'll personally answer your questions and help you tailor everything to your goals. This is your moment. This is your year. Go to thepodcastingchallenge.com right now and save your seat. The link is in the show notes and the description. Thank you for watching these podcasts. Now let's get back to the conversation.
And then from there, I moved from New York to Delaware, and then I moved back to New York. I decided to go back to school to work towards my bachelor's degree in business administration. And during that time, it was, I want to say in 1990, actually, it was 1990. That was the year that my dad passed away. Okay. And so at that particular time, I was the only person left in New York regarding myself, and my siblings weren't there. I had siblings that lived in California, in Florida, Boston, Nevada, and I was the only one left. So the decision had been made to literally sell the house. And then I made the decision to move to Florida with my sister. And so I stopped going to school altogether, put it on pause, and moved down to Orlando, Florida, where I made the decision. It was real quick for me, because going from New York to Orlando is total culture shock in every sense of the word. And I went from making, at that particular time, it was a lot of money. I was making like $12, $13 an hour. And when I went down to Orlando, it dropped down to $5. Ooh. I was like, what the heck? I was like, whoa, wait a minute, right? Yeah. And so working certain jobs, I did what I had to do. And then I said, you know what? I have to go back to school to finish up and get my degree. So I made the decision to go back to school. and I got my degree in business administration. And then a few months after that, I was able to land a job with Charles Schwab and Company.
Okay.
Now, granted, I knew nothing about investing whatsoever. The only thing that I was privy to was I heard about CDs, savings accounts, but that was the scope of what I knew, of my knowledge. And starting at Schwab, basically, I started on the phones and basically helping clients, giving them stock quotes, giving them balance information, just general type information. And eventually, because I was in a call center that started there in Orlando, actually in Maitland, it gave me the opportunity to go to different departments to learn different things. So I moved around to 3 different departments. And then I decided that, you know what, Orlando was not, it was not suiting me anymore, as far as I felt like there wasn't anything there to keep me there. And I wanted to be in somewhat of a more progressive environment, but I knew I didn't want to move back to New York. I knew that for sure. And so I made the decision to move to Atlanta. Now, granted, never lived in Atlanta before, but I felt like it was time for me to move. So I stayed with the company. I moved to Atlanta and I worked in one of the main branches in Atlanta for approximately 16 years. I made a decision to study to get my Series 7 license and my 63. So I became a licensed stockbroker and I primarily worked in the branch environment. I was pretty much the first point of contact for clients that would come into the branch who needed to establish accounts or just needed basic help with their accounts. And then a lot of times I would probe them to see if there were other needs that they had. And then I would hand them off to the financial advisors in the branch. So I did that for 16 years. And then I felt like I still needed to be stretched. Now, mind you, all of this time, there's always been this sense of, I know that there's more that I'm supposed to be doing, but I just don't know what it is. That more factor had always been there. And I branched out several times, even when I was in Orlando, just to backtrack, where I was selling t-shirts, Afrocentric t-shirts. I ended up actually opening up a shop with another partner, and we had a store for a couple of months. So not only was I working full time at Schwab, but I had the store on the weekends, but then I also had a part-time job on top of that,
Oh my
right?
gosh.
So yeah, literally burnt myself out, and the store ended up folding, which was fine because it just wasn't working out. But there are several things that I tried when I was in Orlando, because that entrepreneurial spirit, especially being around my father, that was something that was always in me. And I felt like I had to find I had to find that thing that I could focus on, that I could call my own. I used to at one point do, I don't know if you ever heard of this, artistic impressions, where you do like home shows. I was even doing that for a while. And what happened with that was I ended up twisting my back because you had to carry this large portfolio of artwork, and I messed my back up totally. So then that was the end of that. But fast forwarding back up to Atlanta, got to Atlanta, still working at Schwab, and still dealing with that more factor. There's got to be more. There's got to be more. And just putting myself in different, positions to expose myself to different things of interest. And one of the things that I started to learn about myself is I consider myself to be an avid learner. And if there's something that is of interest to me, I pursue it until I feel like, okay, I'm done. It's on to the next thing, right? And while doing that, I also felt like, well, maybe this is it. Maybe if I do this, maybe this will be the thing that will take off. And then, I can leave corporate America. And I struggled with that for years and years and years and years. And even in being in Atlanta, again, there was this search. I felt like God was telling me, okay, I need you to step out of your comfort zone again. And this time from Atlanta, I ended up moving to Chicago. Never been to Chicago in my life. I don't even know where Chicago came from, but in my spirit, it was telling me to move to Chicago. So that's exactly what I did. I moved again with Schwab to the branch environment. And it was a great experience as far as being in a larger city, more progressive city than it was in Atlanta. But again, I found myself struggling with there's got to be more than this. And those of you who are familiar with Chicago and Chicago winters, if you're someone that's coming from Southern climate into Chicago, and even though I was raised in New York, that whole weather thing left me, right? I mean, it completely
And you
left
didn't
me.
have that lake that wind was blowing off of it. I mean, you had the ocean, but
Right,
there's nothing like that lake that Chicago hawk just be jumping on
right.
you, in you, all over you.
Yeah, it was no joke. And my first year, I was cool. I was like, okay, I got this. I can handle it. And then as I got into my second year, things shifted for me. The winter started affecting me. It started affecting me mentally. It started affecting me physically. And I felt like I was losing myself. I felt like I had become lost. And I had to make the decision of what I was going to do. And I literally ended up leaving Schwab because I felt like if I didn't leave, I didn't know what else was going to happen. I just felt like it was bad. It was dark. It was very, very dark. And so I made the decision to leave and I took some time off. And then I ended up applying for a job with a small wealth management firm and went on to work for them for a couple of years. And everything was going well. Everything was going fine until the same struggle came up again. That same poking at my spirit. This isn't it either, Jill. This isn't it. And I got tired of trying to figure it all out. I got tired of struggling. I got tired of trying, what is it I'm supposed to do? I went from making candles to making jewelry to selling artwork to doing t-shirts. Thought I was the event planner. I don't even know where that came from. And everything that I tried to force failed. Everything that I tried to force failed.
Mm.
And so what happened, I had an aunt at the time, and this is while I was still in Chicago. I had an aunt who was in Florida. She was one of the last surviving aunts on my father's side of the family. And I found out some things about her that was going on that apparently nobody else knew about from a financial standpoint. And she really didn't have anybody that she trusted that could assist her to make sure that she was keeping up with her financial matters and her health matters and things of that nature. So I made the decision to move. And I moved from Chicago down to Florida to be closer to her, to assist her. And it was during that time frame that I had a conversation with her and I had asked her about her estate planning, whether she had any type of estate planning in place. And she did. Now, by asking that question, it prompted me to ask other family members, friends, do you have any type of estate planning in place? Wills, trusts, power of attorneys, health surrogates, and basically found out that the majority of people did not.
No.
Now, I had been exposed to all of this during my tenure at Schwab, but I had absolutely no idea the level of information that I was holding on to that was pertinent to others. I never even thought about that. And that pretty much was the catalyst for where I am right now. It was through my conversation with my aunt and conversations with family and friends that caused me to say, okay, you know what? I have to share this information because it's important. Because I've seen firsthand what happens when you don't have that in place. Dealing with clients that would come into the branch and thinking that they could do certain things just based on relationship without having any type of legal documents in place. None
Oh, none. Yeah,
whatsoever,
absolutely not.
you know? And so that's where I am right now. That's why I finally figured out that, and this may not be for everybody, but this is my story in that my purpose found me.
Yeah.
My purpose found me. And for me to be able to talk about something that comes very natural, to have the level of exposure that I have, and to be able to talk about it with a level of confidence, and to have conversations with people and enlighten them on very what I consider to be normal things. To them, it's new information. It's like, I never knew that. And so that's why I understand that it's important that I focus on this. One other thing, too, that I was focusing on was voiceovers. And everybody always would tell me, man, you have such a nice voice and you have such a mellow voice, and you're when you speak with a certain level of confidence, and your voice resonates and people listen. And so I had even focused on voiceovers, and I'm still doing it to a certain degree, but this is primarily the main thing that I feel right now that I need to focus on. And the voiceovers will open up eventually too. But I just wanted to talk about that a little bit also, because a lot of times I use the voice of JB on
Oh,
a lot of my social media platforms, right?
yeah.
So, but I digress. I'm
Oh
sorry.
no, you are doing so well. And what I'm so enjoying in your story is, and if you're watching this and you've been thinking, hey, maybe I want to do a podcast, or you're thinking, as I'm watching these guys and interacting, and she's done so many things, and I don't think that I'm capable, or because I think both of us want to help you as best that we possibly can, and that's probably why you're watching it, not just to understand, oh, this is great that we get to hear a story and be a story be told, but to say, well, how do I relate to that? And then how can this help me become the person that I wanted to be? Or how do I'm watching Jill and I'm watching Dr. B, and they seem to be living boldly in purpose. I want that. But what's so cool
Mhm.
about this conversation, and a lot of people tell me, well, I don't know if I have anything common with somebody, or I don't know if I can speak to somebody, or I don't know if there's any questions that I could ask, or I don't know how to ask those right questions. You've just given us so much to be able to talk about. And as I'm listening and I'm listening to your story, I'm thinking about, how does her story intersect with mine, and how can I make sure, if I'm asking her questions, that I can not only understand it, but then be able to relate. And
Mhm.
so one of the keys, if you're
Mhm.
if you're on my side of the chair and you're watching this, or eventually her side of the chair, and all the things she's done, is you're listening for all those things that you go, wait a minute, I have that in common. I have that in common. Wait, if she could do that and come out of it, so can I.
Mhm.
And so when I just think about your story, right, and the different places you've been, and so you say, okay, I went down to Florida, and then you mentioned the word Maitland, right? Well, I own portion of a mortgage company that is headquarters in Maitland, Florida, which is so crazy. Then you talk
Well,
about, well, then I moved to Chicago. Well, I've
mhm.
worked in Chicago in the winter and know exactly what it is. Now, I lived in Denver. I would fly there and couldn't wait to come back. Now,
Mhm.
Denver's a cold place, but nowhere near Chicago. Denver has 320 days of sunshine, and if the snow snows on December 23rd, on December 24th, we have the sun has melted it, and we're waiting for it to storm on December 27th, because it melts within like 24 to 48 hours. It doesn't stay. Where if it
Mhm.
snows in Chicago in November, you're still looking at that same snow in March. It isn't going nowhere. It just turned to ice and dirty looking snow. So, so anyways, and then you talked about, and these are things that I pulled out just hearing. She talked about, well, she did fashion and merchandising, right? So I have a daughter who went to FIT, went to the Fashion, Institute of Design and Merchandising, and got her degree there. So I have all these things to talk about. She talks about voiceovers. I have a son who works at Pixar and does voiceovers at Pixar for some of the trailers and the movies and the shorts that they do. And so he works at Pixar University. And so all these different things. When we talk about financial planning, I was a financial advisor. I had my 663 and was a OSJ in 23. If you were in Atlanta, I was with WFG, which was headquartered in Duluth, Georgia. I mean, there's all these intersections that we can have all these conversations about just by taking the time to listen to somebody for 5 to 10 minutes. And, when you start thinking about building trust and you start thinking, because we have all these intersections, because we know some of the same things, there's almost instant credibility, there's instant trust. And then we start talking about, estate planning and how we're helping folks that are trying to figure this all out, and just, you're in the right spot at the right time, and, being able to help families out. I have a living, I've been doing living trust for almost 20 years now. And just this weekend, I was at a Juneteenth event, and I was asking, you might have heard me say this yesterday, but I was asking the folks that were walking by the table I was at, do you know somebody that is going to eventually pass away? And I got these looks at people that were like, do I know anybody? And like they're thinking of, we all are going to pass away someday. Would you like their assets to go to them? And, there's so many questions that aren't being asked. And, one of the things that I would love to just, maybe you can explore with you a little bit is when we think about trust and being able, not necessarily living trust, but trusting each other, like somebody who do business with you. What are some things that you've learned over the years that help you cultivate trust or somebody, because now you're talking about somebody's assets, or you're talking about somebody's, making sure that it goes to their kids or their loved one. So they have to trust you with information that maybe they wouldn't trust anybody else with. How have you learned how to do that, and how has it served you in the way that you do it? I think I already know the answer, but I want you to share it with our listeners and our audience today.
I think the main thing is the relationship part of it. Yeah. Now, I haven't had the opportunity to talk to a lot of new people. Most of the people that I have spoken to, of course, are, families and friends. So there's that relationship that's already there. A lot of times, like you're saying, especially when it comes to financial matters, that can be very touchy. Yeah. And, sometimes people don't want you to know certain things because they themselves may be a little ashamed of certain things, or, they may feel like, well, this is stuff I should know, but I don't know. And they may be embarrassed, that type of thing. And so I'm still trying to figure out ways to be able to connect with people so that, I think it's something that you have to ease into. You can't just jump into it. You have to ease into it in a way so where people feel comfortable enough to open up. Yeah.
Hello, this is Dr. B, and I want to ask you one simple question. What if you died having never become you? Now, I don't mean the version of you that worked the job, raised the kids, or chased security. I mean the person God actually designed you to be, the real you. Because there's a version of your life that's already been written, and it's full of peace, it's full of boldness, it's full of purpose, and of course it's full of power. But most people, many people, they miss it. They live distracted, doubting, disconnected, and deep down they wonder, is this really all there is? But not you, and not today. That's why we created the Becoming the Person universe. It's a living, breathing community of people saying, I want to be who God called me to be. Not someday, but right now. So inside, we'll walk you through 3 levels of transformation. Level 1 is all about identity, where you finally see yourself clearly and know exactly who you are and who you need to become. Level 2 is about mastery, where we develop the disciplines to grow. And then finally, level 3 is legacy, where your life begins to matter beyond you. And hear me. I want you to hear me clear here. This is not a place to passively belong. This is a place to grow, lead, and thrive. We even have ways for you to share in the revenue as we grow, because we believe in building legacy together. And I want you to know the founders and I are praying for you. We have been praying for you. You have been on our hearts. Yes, you have been on our hearts. You're not watching this by accident. And I want to personally invite you to the next info meeting, where we will go over all this community has to offer. All you have to do is just click the link before, you know what to do. But now it's your turn. I want to ask you to ask yourself, what if this is the moment everything changes? What if this is the reason you've been searching? What if all God has been waiting for is for you to say yes? There's a seat for you here, whether you're rediscovering yourself or finally ready to leave a legacy and are ready to contribute. Either way, this is the Becoming the Person universe. And once you're in, your life will never be the same. So I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait to spend time with you. I can't wait to see you on the other side. So let's go live in that purpose and let's do it together.
Yeah. And as they open up to you, then that gives you the opportunity to open, to ask more questions. And then also just make yourself available. Listen, if you feel that, you want to think about this, or if anytime you have additional questions or you just want to run some thoughts or whatever by me, feel free to contact me. No pressure whatsoever. And I think you kind of got to give people a certain amount of room to be able to make a decision whether or not they are going to open up and trust you or they're not. Because I'm not going to force anybody. That's one thing I will not do. If you receive the information, you'll receive it. If you don't receive it, you're not ready to receive it. So I'm not going to force it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that I see as a thread in your story, and when we talk about identity and, you being this strong woman of color that is not afraid to try different things, is not afraid. I mean, just the fact that you're willing, without a community around you, to move to different states, not like, upstate New York where it's close, or, Jersey or somewhere that's right close to home. You're like, no, let me go all the way to Florida. Oh, let me go all the way to Chicago. Oh, let me go to Texas, whatever that is. There's got to be something in your identity that you developed. How did that develop where you weren't afraid to take risk and to move forward?
I think it's just the adventurer in me.
Okay.
I've always, because I love to travel too.
Okay.
So that's just a part of who I am. I've never had any type of reservation of any place that I'd moved to whatsoever. And, a lot of people talk to me about it, and, they think that I'm very courageous for doing that. And I've always felt like I was going to be okay, that one way or the other, I was always going to land on my feet. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about identity, to be honest with you, I literally did have an identity crisis. Oh, okay. Because I really had no idea who I was for a long period of time, because I didn't have the wherewithal to understand what it really meant to be created in the image of God. Mm-hmm. And I caused myself to sometimes think small, and I would cause myself to think, I'm not worthy of this, unconsciously. I'm not worthy of this. I can't do this. And, I need to just stay where I'm at. But yet I was doing all of these different things, but yet still felt like I didn't even know who I was. And I think a lot of that had to do with, because I was trying to find my purpose. And I felt like, what do you have me here for, God? I just don't get it. I know that I'm not just here to work in corporate America for all of my life. So what is it? Why is it? What do you have me here for? And I did. I went through a serious identity crisis. And it wasn't until I took the time to really understand and get into the Word to understand what it meant to be created in the image of God. Yeah. And once I did that, it opened myself up to unlimited possibilities. And granted, I still have moments here and there, but you know what? God's word is God's word. Yeah. It's undisputable. And so me being able to actually, talk myself down and say, hey, that's not what God's word said. This is what God's word said about you. Jeremiah 29:11, one of my favorite scriptures. I know my thoughts and plans for you. They're for good and not evil, for a future and a hope. And so, I had to learn to remind myself that God has me here for a very specific reason. And I had to literally learn how to surrender myself and to understand that it's not meant for me to go through this life by myself. And that community is very important because for a very long time, I was so independent to the point where I was relying on myself. That's such a heavy load.
Yeah, it is.
That is a heavy load because it wears you down mentally, it wears you down emotionally, and it can wear you down physically. And once I made the decision that, I do need people because there are people that know more than I do. There are people that are going to be willing to help me, that are going to be able to act as a resource for me, that are going to be able to, act as a community, which is something that is powerful, so powerful about you. And understanding that there are people that want to see you succeed. And just make sure that you surround yourself with those people.
Yeah.
And, it took me a while to get it, but doggone it, I got
You
it.
got it.
So,
That's what's important. It is. And, God did put us on this planet for a relationship. He didn't plan us to be, for us to be alone and try to figure it all out. And when you get to that point, you're able to truly be able to live in that purpose and be able to help people in ways that you can't even believe because you're in community and you're around them and you're able to help them. As you were, so you have this identity that you're adventurous and this identity that you're going to try new things and that you're going to have that, I guess, that stick-to-itness, that drive, that grit, that, what would you, if somebody was listening and saying, sometimes I feel like I'm not enough, and I kind of believe enough is a relationship of where you're at right now, not an amount or, that you're always trying to hit this amount to be enough. How would you help people through you are enough and you can do this? What are some of the things that you've been able to do, in your life that just says, oh man, yes, I got to keep going?
A lot of it has to do with reading books. I read a lot of self-improvement books.
Okay.
And again, I am very much into the word, God's word. And to me, that has been one of the most enriching and enlightening experiences that I've had as far as my relationship with God, because he knows us. He knows our hearts. He knows our minds. He created us. And sometimes you have to do that self-talk. And you have to understand that sometimes we feed ourselves lies based on what the world says, based on, society says this, society says that. And sometimes we have to get out of our own heads and understand, are we contradicting what God is telling us? And oftentimes that's what happens. And even if it means going to counseling can be very, very helpful too, because you sometimes have to see things from a different perspective. And going to counseling, because I went to counseling too. And I'm not ashamed of that at all, because there were certain things that I just couldn't figure out by myself. And I got tired of trying to figure it out by myself because I was missing stuff. And sometimes you need other people to point things out for you so you can see the perspective and understand, your thinking and your thinking patterns, so you can make the corrections and work towards the corrections. So, between God's word, between counseling, between books, and most of all, surrounding yourself with like-minded people.
Yeah. Associations.
That is extremely important.
Yeah.
Because if you have good people around you, they can build you up. That's what love does. Love builds us up, And so if you have a good core of people that believe in you, love you, appreciate you, know that you are here for specific reasons, that's what you have to do. You have to surround yourself.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
With good people.
Yeah. I mean, the things that you're saying that are so, when we talk about working on ourselves and then, and sometimes we, like you said, I don't know who I am, but if we can find whose we are, then that changes everything. There's a song out, I think the guy's name is Forrest Frank. And he says, in his song, he said, the God who made the universe knows me by my name. And when you start thinking of that part of it, there's nothing that you can't do. But he's not doing it for you. He expects us to do our part. And so when we think about our part in that personal development side of it, how much of your life do you think you spend working on you so you can be more? And then, you talked about reading books. Are there other things that you do that help you to work on you?
Definitely, relocating here, I knew that it was very important for me to find a good church.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a priority for me. And thankfully, I did find a very good church that I'm connecting with a lot of people within the church and serving in the church. And again, it opens me up more to be able to connect more. So that has been instrumental for me. And then, of course, just going to different events that are of interest to me and always keeping myself open. And, when this whole event, the content creators and cash flow event that happened in May, now I had been following Myron Golden for, at least 2 years. And it was interesting because I said, you know what, I'm going to meet him one day.
Mm.
I'm going to meet him one day. And when I found out he was coming to Dallas, it was a no-brainer for me. And, being there, you were there, and my it was manifested for me. And so I just put myself in positions to think about things that I want to happen and do whatever I can do to make those things happen. I try to do that on a regular basis. If there's something that I feel I need to be exposed to, then that's what I do. If I feel I need to read something or educate myself, then that's what I'm going to do. If I feel I need to get deeper into the word, and if there's certain things that I need to focus on that I'm personally struggling with, then that's what I'm going to do. I think one of the things that helped me was, and the reason that my YouTube channel partly is called Beyond the Mask and the Will, is because I personally felt like I was living behind a mask. I felt like I was, on the outside, everything was good.
Yeah.
When people talk to me, they think I got it all together. It's like, no. No, there's some areas in my life that I'm still struggling with that I need to work with. And I made that commitment to myself that, you know what, Jill, you got to start living authentically and unapologetically. And that requires for me to take the mask off. And, I think for me, I want to be able to live in a certain level of truth and honesty. And I want to be able for people to understand that I am not perfect by any means. None of us are. And there are things that I've done in my life that, no, I'm not proud of. And yet I also know that, I serve a forgiving God. And for me to be able to put myself in a position to be more obedient, I can't help but to receive the blessings that God has for me if I put myself in that place of obedience. And that's something that I have to do every single day. Every single day, with how I think, with how I speak, with how I act, every single day. It's not easy.
Wow. Kind of pivot a little bit, just because you and I are we're not getting younger by the day. I know we're both in our early 30s or whatever that we believe that we're in. How do you stay healthy so that you can get up and have the energy to do all these things that you do on a daily basis? What are some health tips that have worked for you that you might be able to share with us?
Yeah, that's the other piece that I just want to touch on a little bit too. Going back to when my mom passed away, basically, I talked about the fact that there was no grief counseling.
Yes.
So I didn't know how to process what happened. I didn't know how to process the fact that I didn't have a mother anymore. I didn't know what to do, how to do as far as expressing my feelings or emotions. So at a very early age, food became a comforter. And as I started gaining weight, it was of concern to my dad. And at that time, being a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, you don't quite know how to process when someone is trying to relay to you that you need to start losing weight because you're gaining weight and it's unhealthy. This is, wow, this is emotional for me.
Thank you.
So how I interpreted it was I wasn't good enough because I was gaining weight. And I found myself, I literally, my body became an emotional warehouse where any type of emotion that came up, whether it be sadness, whether I was happy, whether I was mad, whether I was angry, whether I was frustrated, certain emotions were fed with food. And I did that unconsciously because I didn't know. I didn't realize that I was replacing what I missed with my mother with food, and not knowing how to communicate, not knowing how to communicate my feelings. Growing up in school and being teased because of my weight. And I was a very shy and reserved person. I didn't bother anybody. And when people would make fun of me, tease me, I didn't say anything. I just didn't know how to react.
Took it all in.
And so I held so much in. And that's how I pretty much went through a majority of my life, even into adulthood, because I honestly did not know that my voice mattered. I honestly did not know that I still had a level of worth, that I was acceptable, that I was okay, that I was enough. In my heart and in my mind, it was just the opposite. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. Nobody's going to want me. I'm not acceptable. I'm not this. All of these negative thoughts about myself. And in those negative thoughts, it created negative behaviors beyond just eating. And it led to some behaviors that I just was not proud of. So, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's good. So obviously you've got past, some of those things, and they're still part of who you are, evidenced by even bringing those emotions and those thoughts up. What have you done, I guess, or how did you help yourself, or maybe it's through therapy and everything else, to get out of that part of your life?
Yeah, so it had gotten to a point where my weight I was close to topping at about 350 pounds.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I'm going to share this picture.
Okay.
I'm going to try and cut my brother out so you don't see him. But can you see that?
Yes. Wow. Okay.
And that was my highest weight.
Okay.
And the thing about it is sometimes you see yourself in the mirror, but you don't see the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times you don't see that truth until you see the pictures. And for me, I was borderline everything. Borderline diabetic, borderline high blood pressure. I was borderline on a lot of things. And the one thing that I said to myself is that I really do not want to leave this earth as a result of something that I could have better control over.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I had struggled so long with it, I made the decision to do the gastric bypass surgery.
Okay.
And that's what saved my life.
Yeah.
And between that and working out, eating more healthier, cutting out a lot of I still have, my little sugar moments where, I just have to get that sugar fix. But for the most part, I've learned to cut out a lot of the foods that are not good for us. And yeah, you just have to make that decision. And that was not a hard decision for me to make, because I honestly believe that saved my life. Because I don't know if I'd still be here if I hadn't, to be honest with you. I don't know. Or I could be in a situation where I am, ending up on medicines and things of that nature.
Well, and whatever the way that you lost the weight, there had to be something in your mind that said, no more of where I'm at, no more of not feeling enough, no more of not, and I'm going to do this. But you've been able to maintain it. It hasn't been, there are several people that haven't become the person who can be the less weight because they're still living in that who they are, or their belief of who they are at that moment. And then that surgery doesn't work as well because they haven't become the person who needs to be that healthy person, or needs to be able to get rid of some of the emotional eating that you were doing,
Yeah.
that you said, wait a minute, that's not who I am. That's not whose I am. And you were able to do that. And so just so appreciate you being willing to share that. And the fact that, no, this is something that you were able to get past, to move forward. And now the life that you get to have now is just so much more precious because you were able to go through some of those things that you did. So, oh my gosh, it's so cool that you were able to share that. Hey, we've been talking almost 55 minutes now, so this is
Oh, wow.
this is good.
Wow.
It goes, well, I have nothing to say, right? And you've just yet shared with us so much of your life and so much of who you are. I asked you most of the questions, and I want you to be able to just kind of share the thoughts and things that you wanted to make sure on this podcast that were conveyed. And so I want you to open this up for you to be able to share however you would like for the folks that are listening.
Wow. Well, one of the things that I talk about too, that's totally separate from the whole estate planning and, being an educator, is understanding what pain is.
Mm.
And, I created an acronym that I use, which is PAIN, and it's purposeful alignment is necessary. And I think it's important that people understand that, again, we all have our own unique stories. And more than likely, when you listen to people's story, there was some type of pain that was involved, whether it was physical, emotional, spiritual, financial. Everybody experiences certain levels of pain. And I honestly believe that oftentimes that pain is what leads us to our purpose. It sucks that you have to go through it. But if you are a believer, you understand that if Christ hadn't gone to the cross and suffered on the cross and experienced the pain that he experienced, both physically and emotionally, his purpose would have never been fulfilled. And I just want to encourage people to, I was getting ready to say, don't be afraid of the pain. And know that you can get through it.
Yeah.
Know that you can get through it when you understand that you are so, so, so important and relevant to God, that he wants to do things in you that you would never expect that he could do at the level that he can do. And to know that, each of us has a specific purpose, and not to think of yourself any less, and to always put yourself in a position to understand that you're here for a reason. You're not here just to take up space. So I just want to encourage people to it's one thing to have that pain and go through that pain, But it's another thing when you make the decision to live in the pain.
Yeah.
I don't want people to live in the pain, because that's not what God has us here for. He doesn't want us to live in it. He wants us to live through it and to get through it, so we can get to the good stuff, the good part about why he has us here.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm resonating with what you say. It's not that you're trying to be afraid of the pain. It's just that you know that pain is part of our existence. You know that it
Right.
is something that we're going to go through, and there is another end. I mean, I can remember, as I grew up, some of the time in the Black church, and there'd always be the ladies who were at the front and the pews and that kind of stuff, and they would greet me, and they, just love on me in different ways. And I'd be like, "Hey, Miss Johnson, how you doing today?" And she would say, "Going through it, going through it." And I always wondered, like, Miss Johnson, you ever gonna get through it? Like, you've been going through it for like 15 years right now. When we gonna get through this?
You ain't get through it yet, sister.
But so I love your acronym. Purposely aligning is necessary. That is so cool when we think about how do we deal with that, because we can't get the joy, the tremendous amount of joy and happiness, if there wasn't something on the other side of it that we realized this was hurt. And God has done such a great job. We remember the pain and that it was there. But that feeling sometimes of that pain, that's hard to remember. Like, I can remember, I have scars all over my body where I know there was cuts and I know that it hurt, but I can't remember that hurt other than just the looking from the outside. Oh, that hurts. I don't want to ever happen again. But that actual physical pain of the hurt, he takes that away from us. And that part of our mental side of it, he takes that away from us as well, if we're willing, not only to trust in him and walk through, but then do the things necessary, to move out. And so, oh my gosh, this has been such an incredible conversation, Jill. Thank you so much. There's, when I think of Beyond the Mask and all the masks that you've worn, and getting past each of those masks in a way that has made you better, that has made you a resource for other folks. And I hope if you're watching this and this is your first episode that you've watched, I hope that you subscribing notifications, because we have lots of them. But I also hope that you're willing to go to the Beyond the Mask and the Will, her YouTube channel, watch some of the things that she has on there, but then contact her. She said she's made herself available to have those questions and those things. And you can tell she has this incredible life that she's been able to live, and the things that she's been able to do and to accomplish. And just for you to be vulnerable today and share those with us has been just so fantastic. And so I hope that you enjoyed it. I didn't ask you too many questions that just,
no,
this again, because I promise you, your story and what you shared with us today has just been amazing. Do you have one final thought that you'd love to share with everybody before we end the show for today?
One final thought. Never, ever stop dreaming and going for your more. I'm 61 years old. I know I don't look it.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
So if I can do it, anybody can do it. Wow. Don't leave this earth without fulfilling your purpose.
Wow. Thank you. Well, there you've heard it. Today we are Beyond the Mask and the Will. And so thank you, Jill Butler, for being on the show today. Hey, don't forget that you are God's greatest gift. He loves you if you allow him to. I want you to make sure that whatever you're doing, let's go, let's grow, let's become. Visit our site at becomingtheperson.com, because it's going to take you to Becoming the Person Universe, which is going to give you ability to enter into a community that is here for you to be able to do things you want to do. So you guys have an amazing, awesome, incredible day, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Thank you, Dr. Arnold. Bye.